Welcome to Voices in Aging. My name is Janice Whitaker, and I am the Administrator and Community Liaison for the Center of Geriatric Nursing Excellence at the Penn State College of Nursing. I am the host for today's discussion on the importance of early detection and proactive testing for COVID-19, especially for our vulnerable population in senior living communities. Our guests today are Lynn Katzman, founder and president of Juniper Communities, and owner-operator of senior housing communities. We also have Jonathan Roberts, vice president for strategy for Decina, a developer of data-driven diagnostic solutions that enables early disease intervention and improved care outcomes for patients. Jonathan, how important is early disease identification and intervention in improving patient care outcomes for COVID-19?
Great question, and thank you for having me today. I think we've seen numerous studies that show the immense importance of across the board testing, and then from that testing, the immediate and early interventions for COVID, especially in vulnerable communities. If you have delays and those folks, delays in the results coming back, and those folks don't know they're positive, or they're having to be quarantined much longer than they need to, that can have a lot of lasting adverse effects, either through very large spread that would otherwise be avoided, or just through deterioration of just their livelihood. Just normally they're not able to go out and do the things they'd like to do. So it's very important as a company to be able to provide fast and accurate testing, not just one or the other.
Yeah, fast and accurate certainly sounds like that's very important. And you mentioned the quality of life and the impact that could potentially have if it wasn't fast and accurate. So Lynn, do you want to add anything to that question at all?
Yeah, I do. I think we learned at Juniper very early on that this disease was transmitted asymptomatically. So it was not just by people that showed symptoms. And so being able to test everyone on a regular basis and get the results rapidly enough to be able to identify those who were carrying the virus, but who didn't have active symptoms is critical to maintaining the health of our population. Essentially, it stops the spread of the disease. So without testing that is accurate and that we get the results from quickly, we don't have that capability. So that was absolutely critical. And Decina has been very helpful to us in managing that part of the equation. Without them, I don't think we would have had the opportunity to have caught as much of the potential spread of the virus within our communities.
So Jonathan, do you want to expand on that, how enhanced testing methods have helped manage the spread of the virus from your experience?
Definitely. And Lynn is 100% correct that, that's what makes COVID so dangerous, is that you can spread it. You feel completely fine and healthy, right? And so you could have just someone on staff that is presumably much, a very healthy individual that feels completely fine, but they're going around, and all of a sudden you have a whole community that's in pretty dire straits. And I think that's also the additional innovations that we've been able to bring to the table as a company, is bringing in the algorithms. That it's not just a one size fits all approach. We're able to stratify and figure out which individuals are most at risk, prioritize testing for those folks, but then at the same time, enable the, quick and easy, relatively painless. We've been able to innovate on that as well. We can talk on that more later, for all staff, to make sure we're catching it quick, we're intervening before there's any kind of massive outbreak or spread. And I think also, we'll get into this more later as well, but making sure that we're doing PCR testing that has a much higher degree of accuracy, that's also important. So across the board, making it easy so folks are adopting it. You're going to get a lot of pushback if you're doing something that's painful. So making it easy and streamlining the process as much as possible, including data.
So Lynn, tell us how Juniper has embraced technology and new medical developments to improve safety for residents and staff.
Well, I think Jonathan just did a really good job of outlining a couple of the things that we've done in partnership with Decina. I want to elaborate on them because I think it's critical. One of the things that was really difficult at the beginning of the pandemic was not only getting sufficient testing and getting those test results quickly, But the way the sample was taken was very difficult, particularly for older people and those with cognitive issues. It was, you'd take a long Q-tip and you'd stick it up to the back of the nose. So one of the things we did with Decina is we did a validation study on a cheek swab, which enables us in the states that we work with Decina to utilize a simple swab that someone can do on their own or with assistance if need be, which isn't uncomfortable. And that makes the whole process much more manageable. It enables us to do testing regularly without people being afraid or having concerns about it and saying, no, I've just been tested. This disease spreads very rapidly, we've learned. And again, because you don't always carry symptoms, it's problematic. Now, in terms of the algorithms, one of the things that we were able to do with Decina and hope to do more of in the future is to take a look at our residents and stratify them according to a number of chronic disease categories, if you will. People who have different vital signs, who have different chronic disease patterns, they fall into different groups in terms of this virus. And so together with Decina, we've been able to develop protocols that enable us to determine who's most likely not only to be susceptible to the disease, but to come down with more severe symptoms. And that's been really critical. So there are a couple of things that I think have been very important to us on the testing side. One is being able to have a comfortable test. The second is to be able to determine who's most susceptible to the disease. And there's a third, which is to streamline the testing process itself. Now, most people don't understand that testing doesn't just happen. In a community such as ours, you've got to get everybody organized. You've got to buy the tests or get them from a provider. Then you've got to administer the test. So the cheek swab helped us there. And then you've got to document that this sample is from this individual. You have to put it on a list. You have to get it into a carton and send it to the lab. That all takes an enormous amount of time just when our team members are busy taking care of residents. And so one of the things we did with Decina that I think makes them so special is that they were able to streamline that process. They use technology, they use their process engineering to enable us to reduce the amount of documentation we had to do, automate that documentation, and speed the process up. So for us, it may not sound like a lot, but if we can eliminate the need for a full-time nurse to be part of the testing process, who was doing essentially busy work because of the processes that they have helped develop, it saves us a lot of time, and it makes it better for our residents because they spend more direct one-on-one time with residents outside of testing. So it enabled us to continue testing, but still do the regular work we need to do. So those three things were critical. And I think due to the technology and also the approach, the scientific approach that Decina brought to the table.
Yeah, well, it certainly sounds like you maximize the comfort, the efficiency, and the innovation involved with the testing process. And so, Jonathan, can you explain some of the differences in the diagnostic test for COVID-19?
Definitely. No, I'd be happy to. And it's a great question because with COVID-19, there's been such a flurry of activity. The FDA has approved various ways of going about detecting it, but there are some pretty significant differences. And so the testing that we're doing in our lab is a molecular test. It's PCR testing, as I mentioned earlier. And this detects the virus's genetic material. And this is different than the other rapid or antigen tests that are being done. And it's in general much more safe, much more accurate. And so, and some folks prefer not to have their finger pricked, or there's differences there as well. But the main difference is going to be, in general, the accuracy. And so being able to cut that swab and then look at the genetic material there in our lab fairly quickly, that's basically what's allowing us to do a much faster turnaround time, but also a much higher degree of sensitivity and specificity, generally accuracy. So folks can be confident that their results are accurate.
So Lynn, contact tracing is an effective way of reducing the spread of a contagious disease. How has the testing methods been able to assist with that process of tracking for tracking purposes?
Thank you. That's a fun question for me to answer, and not only a great question. I actually attended the Johns Hopkins course on contact tracing, and we had people at each of our communities do that. So I know a little bit about contact tracing. And frankly, one of the things you learn is that the disease is most potent in a particular period after the time you're exposed. So the more you do testing and the more you understand who is positive, and the quicker you can reach out to that person and find out who they were in contact with during that time that they are most likely to be contagious, makes a difference. So for us at Juniper, everyone who comes into the community is screened, and we ask them for their contact information. So even if they are not a regular associate or resident, we have a means of tracking them and getting to them. So the individual who tests positive, if unfortunately they do, will then go back through a period of time and tell us who they were in contact with for more than, I want to say it's 15 minutes and closer than six feet. And I may not get that correct. So Janice, if you can help me, that would be helpful. But basically, you've got to be in a room with them for a particular amount of time and go from there. So we're able to know who's in our building, who's been tested, and go back and talk to them. Now, contact tracing for people outside of our community, we make every effort to call those people if they're identified by the individual who tests positive. And there are also local and state contact tracing programs as well that we provide the names of people who test positive via a variety of registries, and then they take it the next step to do the contact tracing from there. But I think it's important to know that we do it internally, we do it immediately, and we have the system set up, and we've trained our people. They know how to do contact tracing, which is I'm grateful for.
Yeah, the awareness and the education around the importance of contact tracing is really essential. And, the timing of it is also vital to the success.
Yes.
I'm actually doing contact tracing at our university to provide some assistance to reducing the spread on campus. And it's 6 feet or less. And
thank you.
Our protocol is 10 minutes or less,
Okay.
but that could vary from place to place. So it is certainly evident that exciting top-level research and medical technology is being implemented at record speed to ultimately improve patient care and overall public health. Are you finding that this is having a positive impact on the health of residents and staff, as well as reducing stress levels due to isolation in senior living communities?
Well, I think that's a great question. It's a long question. And I think technology, I'm going to answer it a little differently and take it perhaps out of what you would expect in Jonathan's realm for just a moment. And I'm going to address social isolation. And I'm going to do that in two ways. Number one, if you test regularly and you control the contagion in a community, you have a much better opportunity for allowing for some types of engagement. And that's really important for social isolation. So I guess I lied, Jonathan, I was going back to you, but I'm now going to go to another piece. One of the things early on in the pandemic is, regardless of what we just didn't know as much, and people had to isolate. They were in their apartments for a very, very long time. So Juniper used technology. We created a crowdsourcing activities or engagement site. It's called Virtual Connections, and you can find it at slvirtual.com. And it's a compilation. We crowdsourced a number of different types of activities that people could do from their home, whether it be their apartment or their home in the greater community. Everything from visiting an archaeological dig somewhere in Africa to attending the Metropolitan Opera's performance of Madame Butterfly and everything in between. There are things on how to do crafts, how to do things in your apartment, how to do exercises to keep your body moving. And so we were very pleased to do that. Obviously, that's something and it's helpful. Ultimately, it's testing and I hope the vaccine, which will enable us to open up our communities more to avoid the kind of social isolation that I think we all are suffering from, but particularly older adults.
Jonathan, did you have any other comments or information you'd like to share with us today that we haven't gotten to?
Yeah, I think specifically on that point, I do think that we are seeing, like I said earlier, there's a lot of studies that show that if you're doing testing, quite often, in combination with, some form of either prioritizing isolation, or, just trying to limit social interactions, I think that is, at the end of the day, the best way to limit the spread. And we also are very excited for the vaccine to be coming. We're also just very excited to see, partners such as Juniper, working with us. So we've been in the healthcare space for a number of years, and change in healthcare can be tough, and people don't always jump on it right away. So just kudos to Juniper and everyone over there, and we've really enjoyed working with them.
Well, as you've mentioned, the pandemic has certainly created so many different challenges, including tremendous change on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. But having two innovative companies, Juniper Communities and Decina, working together with their specialized contributions is really what it sounds like. It's making a huge difference for the residents that are in the Juniper Communities. What are your thoughts about the vaccine will be coming out soon? We hope as early as next week. And how will that impact testing and contact tracing, all the things that we've talked about today in care communities?
Well, I'll take it first, if that's okay with you, Jonathan.
Right.
We're thrilled to have the vaccine coming out, and we are very excited that we expect all of our associates and the vast majority of our residents to line up and be ready for the vaccine. The vaccines that are likely to be approved this year, so the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, both require 2 doses. And the Pfizer vaccine, which has been now reviewed by a committee of the FDA and has been suggested that it be approved, and likely will be later today or tomorrow. The research suggests it's about 52 to 53% effective after the first dose and 95% effective after the booster. So what that says is that we can't let up. We have to continue testing, and we intend to continue testing twice a week, which is, we think, very helpful in identifying early anyone who is positive with the virus. And in addition to that, we're going to continue with all of our infection prevention activities. So for us, we call that mask up, wash up, and speak up. So when someone sees someone not doing the right thing, let them know so that we can protect the community.
Lynn hit most of the major points there. It was very well said. I think we anticipate there's still to be a need for testing into the future, both in these communities and in all of our communities as a whole. We're looking at maybe, as mentioned, around 50% after the first dose, 95% after the second. There's going to be a lot of folks that might worry, hey, was I in that 5%? I have a cold or I have the flu. Am I in that 5%? And so I think as far as, Decina's outlook on this, we're going to keep ramping up our abilities to make sure that we can still maintain a very quick turnaround in the accurate testing capabilities.
Absolutely. Maintain that level of vigilance for quite a period of time. There's a month between the first and the second doses. And then, the community needs to obtain the vaccine as well in order to reduce the risk as well. So, well, thank you so much to our two special guests today, Lynn Katzman from Juniper Communities and Jonathan Roberts from Decina. We really have had a lively and interesting and informative conversation today. We thank you so much for everything you're doing to care for the older adults living in senior living communities at this time. Keep up the wonderful work to keep them healthy and safe.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Janice.
Thanks.